Hi, my name is Ashley, host of Sublime Review. Thank you so much for tuning into my channel and into my non-spoiler review of Don't Breathe 2. Um, I can't wait to talk to you about this movie, so let's jump right into it. I remember when they announced that they were going to be doing a sequel to Don't Breathe, which came out back in 2016. And I remember being extremely skeptical about them doing a part two. I'm going to go over Don't Breathe. So that is going to be a spoiler. I'm going to spoil that first movie. So I'll try to do like some timestamps for you guys if you want to skip that. Although if you haven't seen Don't Breathe, then I don't know why you're here to see a Don't Breathe 2 review. I don't know. Maybe you're just very curious about Don't Breathe 2, but I don't know. But if you can skip over the spoiler section if you just don't want to, if you don't want me to talk, if you don't want to hear me talk about Don't Breathe. But yeah, so with Don't Breathe, the way that they set it up, or the way that it ended, the blind man who is the main character in Don't Breathe 2 was definitely a bad guy. And so I was very confused about how they were going to do a Don't Breathe 2. Like it just didn't make any sense. So let me give you the premise for Don't Breathe. Uh, three or four strangers break into this blind man's house. They assume he is rich and that he is an easy score. Um, there's a plot twist. Turns out that this old blind man is not at all defenseless. He ends up setting up traps for these people. Three of them, if there are four, three of them died. Like all of the men died, and the remaining character who would live was the only female. And she ends up, so that was like the first twist. He sets up those traps. We realize that this man is clearly capable of defending his home. Like whenever they make even like a little sound, he immediately can hear them. Like he knows where they are, right? So that was a fun little twist. Not so much that he was, setting traps and murdering them, like or anything like that, but they were in his home, so he was defending his home. And I don't know, as an audience member, I was like, okay, I mean, you're in his on his property, so you kind of got what you deserve a little bit. Um, but it turns out that there's another twist. So the female who broke in, she ends up in his basement and she discovers another young woman who is bound in his basement, or chained up in his basement and pregnant. And it is quickly discovered that he was the one who impregnated her. And he did that because he lost his daughter. And so he impregnated this young woman to have his child, to get back the daughter that he lost. Um, a, a, a scuffle happens, and the young woman ends up dying. The young woman who was pregnant ends up dying, and he captures the woman who broke into his home, and he bounds her up. And the way they set up the scene was terrifying. Like I remember being in the theaters where the woman who broke into his home, she was bound and she woke up, and he was just there with his, I can't even describe it, like it was like a turkey baster filled with his you know what, because he was going to inseminate, he was going to, inseminate her. And I remember being in the theaters and the audience just being like, wow, like we were all so much in shock. Like, so that was the second twist. The fact that this man, at first with the first twist, you're like, okay, he's defending himself, right? Or he's defending his home from, these trespassers. And then in the second twist, we realize he's actually a very terrible guy. He's a rapist who has captured a young woman and forcibly impregnated her, and he was going to impregnate the young woman who broke into his home. I believe another scuffle happens, and the young woman ends up escaping. and the old man ends up in the hospital, still alive. And that's where we end with him. And that's where they should have ended it. I was perfectly fine with Don't Breathe. I think that it ended perfectly. I thought it was just such a very clever movie. I really liked the twist. I did not expect them at all. And it's just a really good movie. So that's definitely something that I'll probably end up watching again. I really enjoyed that. So I'll probably check that out again. So now we get into part two. Based off what I just told you, you can understand my skepticism coming into this movie. Like, I know we've been getting like a lot of films where like bad guys are helming their own movies, but there's got to be a point where it's like I don't think that they're redeemable. You know what I mean? And this is definitely the goal with this movie, to try and redeem this character. So let's get into Don't Breathe 2. Like, when we were first introduced to her, she's currently in the midst of training. So like, she's running from his dog, and she's trying to obtain a weapon, but he ends up catching her and he says like, you failed your training. And once they get back home, she's like, can I go to town? Like, I've been stuck in our house for 3 months. And he's like, no, you failed your training. No, he's like, no, you failed your training. Because he sounds like the old Dumbledore, like the first Dumbledore from Harry Potter parts 1 and 2. You failed your training. Once you pass your training, you can go outside. And she's like, that's just not fair. He's like, I don't care. It's stuff like that. I'm going to get into his acting and how he's portrayed, because I think all of that is a part of trying to get us to sympathize with him. But I'll get into that in a minute. So, so he's clearly very strict with her. We're introduced to another character. She takes his plants and she goes sell them in town for him. Not his plants, but like regular plants. And I guess he feels bad. Like the woman who, the carrier woman who takes his plants, she guilts him into letting Phoenix go into town with her so that she can get out and about. She's all like, if you keep her bound and she's going to rebel at some point. She says something like that. And he's like, fine. He lets Phoenix go with her and they go into town. And while in town, Phoenix comes across this guy, or rather this guy kind of traps her in the bathroom, being super creepy and super weird. And I'm like, oh God, based off of like what happened with Don't Breathe, like what's going to happen here? I'm really worried for this little girl. And she's like, sir, I'm not trying to talk to you. Like, can you go away? And luckily she has her dog with her, and her dog, growls at that man and he lets her go. It's very quickly realized that, this man is trying to pursue her. He's trying to capture her, because he goes to his truck, and in his truck is some other people, and he's like, let's follow that girl. And so they end up following Phoenix home. They wait until nighttime, lure the blind man's dog out, and he goes out in search of the dog. And while Phoenix is in the house alone, they break in and attempt to capture her. And that, I think, is where I'm going to like really end the plot talking. I'll end it up to that point. So let's get into the characters. Madeline Grace plays Phoenix, and I have to say that she does such a great job. When the kidnappers do get into the house, she's basically trying to avoid them. Again, no spoilers or anything, but she's been trained by this old man she's lived with him for like 8 years. So she's been trained by him during that time, and seeing her like try to maneuver around these guys, these, the people who are trying to kidnap her, is so awesome. I think that, Madeline Grace really commands the screen. I really enjoy just watching her entire sequence and trying to avoid them. There's some really cool moments, some cool shots with her. Like sometimes a bad guy would try to like appear around a corner, and she would like go in one direction and he would be coming around a corner and she's just gone. I thought stuff like that was pretty cool. There was one scene, not one scene, but there's just like one moment where she was trying to avoid a kidnapper in her bedroom, and another kidnapper was walking up the stairs, and so like there was these 2 points that she was trying to avoid, and what she ended up doing was like turn off the lights and like falling down. I'm like, what? And so the two kidnappers, they meet where she had fell, and I'm like, did she just perform like a Houdini trick? Like, what just happened there? But what ended up happening, I'm not going to even tell you like what ended up happening. I was like, okay, that kind of suspends belief, my belief a little bit, because I'm not sure how she managed to do that, but I just thought it was so cool that she did it. Yeah, she had some really great moments, even once she was kidnapped and she's being rescued. She still does such a great job. I will almost even like love like a search and rescue type of movie starring her, and even Stephen Lang, not necessarily as the blind man, but just as like another character, because I'm going to get into his character too. Yeah, I thought she was really good. I really like her character. Now, let's talk about Stephen Lang's character. Oh boy, the blind man. First, I have to say that his physicality is absolutely amazing. Like, during his action scenes, I just thought he was so great. Like, one of the things that bothers me about action scenes is when they're kind of unrealistic, where like he's not, I don't consider him a protagonist, but where the two people who are fighting, they're trading blows, but they don't really get hurt. Nothing of consequence really happens to them. I really don't like that, but they definitely don't do that in this movie. Like, when he got beaten, when he was hit, and when he was down, he went down. And what's funny about his acting is that he really hammed up the fact that he was like this old man. And I'm just like, you're clearly doing this to try and make the audience sympathize with him, because he would always be grunting, and like he'd be like, oh, ooh, oh, and I'm like, bro, come on, and like when he was, and at the same time, it's like realistic a little bit, because he is an old man, so if he's gonna get hit, he's gonna go down, right? But at the same time, I'm like, okay, we get it. Like, can you get up? Phoenix is gone. We need to get up right now, sir. Like, they really tried to soak in those moments where he was down. And I really think that part of that reason was to get us to feel bad for him. And they were clearly trying to redeem this character. There are a few twists in here that try to make him seem like he's a good guy, that try to get you as an audience to root for him. In terms of the twists, are they effective? I would say almost not as much as the twist in the first movie, and part of that problem was due to, I think, the that opposing force. The kidnappers. They seemed a little over the top at times. Like, there was some overacting. There was moments where I just could not take them seriously. Whereas with the young people who broke into his house in the first one, like, I thought they did a really good job, like, at acting. But in this one, they felt like very campy villains, and so I couldn't really take the plot twist seriously, especially like the second one, or at least it didn't have that same level of gravity for me, because I just couldn't take the characters seriously. Like, not talking about the blind man or the little girl. I'm talking about the other characters that they were kind of up against. But nevertheless, it was still interesting. Those plot twists. Last thing I gotta say that they tried to do to just make this character seem redeemable is his speech. Like he gives like this big speech at the end, and I'm just like, here we go. You know, he's like, again, bringing back that Dumbledore speech, you know, way of talking. I'm just a bad man. Like he even acknowledges he's a bad man. Like they don't try to sell to you that he's not a bad man. So I'll give the filmmakers that. And he, you know, he's like, I'm a bad man. I have murdered. I have raped. And I'm like, is this movie over? Like, what? But I give them credit for acknowledging it, I guess. So, yeah, I would say that I can't find a character like this redeemable. It's just not possible. Like, you know, there's a line you cross, and what his actions have taken, you know, have done, yeah, it's a no for me. They really tried it, and it's clear to me that this was just very much a cash grab, and you know they just decided that they just wanted to try something else with this character, but you just can't do it. Um, and plus, this movie came out so late, like 5 years after it came out. It's almost like there was no point in it really coming out. So my overall thoughts on this movie is it's definitely a streaming movie. I probably wouldn't go out to go see it in theaters, although my theaters was packed, um, and I felt kind of gross being there. So I would just say on principle alone, just stream it. But let's say if you were trying to go out to the theaters and you're trying to watch something and Don't Breathe 2 was on your radar, I think that you would have a good time. I think you'll have some fun with this. Again, I thought the action scenes were great. They were very gruesome. There were some good shots, and there were not so great shots. Like the CGI was a little weird at moments, like really weird at moments. I really liked the little girl. I thought that she was kind of like the highlight of the film. I do actually like Scott. Scott. I keep calling him Scott. I do actually like Stephen Lang. I thought that he did a great job in this kind of action role. But this character is just not redeemable. Like it's just not doing it for me. Like I felt no sympathy for this man. Just like I did in this review, I was kind of laughing at the moments where they were clearly trying to make me feel sympathy towards him. But nevertheless, I still think that you'll have fun watching this movie. I just don't think it's a movie that you have to scramble to go out and see in theaters. But that's my overall thoughts and review on Don't Breathe 2. Let me know what you guys think, and let me know, let me pose a question to you guys. Do you think that there's a point where a character can't be redeemed? For me, it's excessive murder and violence, like not in self-defense, and also rape. You know, like that. At that point, it's like, yeah, no, you're over with. And then we're also talking like Cruella, skinning animals, harming animals. Yeah, there's no redeeming you. But yeah, let me know what you think. Like, is there a point that you feel like a character can't be redeemed? If murder and even possibly rape you think can be redeemed, like what would a character have to do in order to, you know, get to that point? Like I'm very curious, like what you would think. To me, there's nothing they can do. But that is my review. I hope that you enjoyed it. First episode, or you know, first video. I'm very excited about this channel, and I can't wait to post more reviews for you. I do plan on reviewing What If, since this is my first video and my first time getting into it. Obviously, What If part 1 came out last week, or episode 1 came out next week. So I'm going to try to get that in tomorrow. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Be sure to check me out on Instagram and Facebook. I'm also on Twitter. I look forward to hearing from you. See you then.